I was 22, a senior in college, and like everyone else that March, desperate to get away from campus for spring break. My friends had planned this huge trip to Cancun, but I couldn't afford it on my student budget. My roommate Sarah was in the same boat, so we decided to do something cheaper, but still fun. A road trip to Charleston for a few days. We found this cute Airbnb just outside the historic district for like $70 a night. It was a guest house behind someone's main property, which explained the good price. The listing had a bunch of 5-star reviews, and the photos looked decent enough. Small but clean, with a little kitchenette and bathroom. Perfect for 2 broke college students. We arrived Thursday around 3 p.m. after a 6-hour drive from Raleigh. The host, Melissa, had sent us the door code, so we didn't have to meet her in person. The place was exactly as advertised, tiny but clean, with a separate entrance from the driveway. We could see the main house about 50 feet away through some trees, but it felt private enough. After unpacking our stuff and freshening up, we grabbed an Uber downtown and spent the evening exploring. We had dinner at this amazing seafood place and checked out some bars on King Street. It was around 1 a.m. when we got back to the Airbnb. I remember because I checked the time on my iPhone as we were fumbling with the door code. I woke up around 3 a.m. to use the bathroom. Our place was dark, except for the little nightlight in the bathroom and Sarah's phone charging on the nightstand. As I was heading back to bed, I glanced out the window and noticed a light on in the main house. No big deal, right? But then I noticed a silhouette in one of the windows, and it looked like someone was staring directly at our guest house. I figured it was probably just Melissa checking something, but something about it made me uneasy. I went back to bed and eventually fell asleep again. The next morning, we headed out early to explore the city. We spent the whole day walking around, taking pictures for Instagram, and trying local food. We came back to the Airbnb around 8 p.m. to change before going out again. As we were getting ready, I noticed a small piece of paper had been slipped under our door. It was a handwritten note that said, "Please keep noise down after 10 p.m. Walls are thin." Manager. This was weird for a couple reasons. First, we hadn't been noisy at all. We literally just slept there and were out all day. Second, all the communication so far had been from Melissa through the Airbnb app. And third, the listing specifically said it was a detached guest house, not connected to anything else where noise would be an issue. I showed Sarah the note, and she agreed it was strange, but suggested maybe they left it for all guests as a precaution. Made sense, so we shrugged it off and headed out for the night. When we got back around midnight, I had this weird feeling as we approached the guest house. I couldn't explain it, but something felt off. I made Sarah wait while I checked the door before entering. It was locked just as we'd left it, so we went inside. Everything looked normal at first, but then Sarah pointed out that the bathroom door was closed. We both remembered leaving it open when we left. Neither of us wanted to open it, so we stood there like idiots for a solid minute before I finally worked up the courage. There was nothing inside, thankfully, but I noticed the window was now cracked open slightly. I was 99% sure it had been closed before. "Did you open this?" I asked Sarah. "No way. I haven't even used the bathroom since we got back." We checked all our belongings, but nothing was missing. We decided maybe the host had come in to fix something and forgotten to let us know. Creepy, but not necessarily sinister. Still, we made sure all the windows were locked and pushed a chair against the front door before going to bed. The next day was our last full day in Charleston. We tried to shake off the weird vibes from the night before and enjoy ourselves. We were out all day again, but this time I wanted to get back before dark. Something about the place was making me increasingly uncomfortable. We returned around 6 p.m., and everything seemed normal. We decided to stay in that night, order pizza, and watch Netflix on my laptop. Around 9 p.m., Sarah went to take a shower. While she was in there, I heard footsteps outside. Our guest house had these gravel paths around it, so footsteps made a pretty distinctive crunching sound. I muted Netflix and listened. The footsteps seemed to circle the entire guest house, pausing occasionally like someone was stopping to look in the windows. Our curtains were closed, but they were thin enough that someone could probably see silhouettes inside with the lights on. I texted Sarah. "Someone walking around outside. Hurry up!" She came out of the bathroom a minute later, wrapped in a towel. "What's going on?" she whispered. Before I could answer, we heard a light tapping on one of the windows, then another tap on a different window, like someone was testing each one. "Fuck this," Sarah said, grabbing her clothes and rushing back to the bathroom to change. I called 911 and tried to explain the situation as calmly as possible. The dispatchers said they'd send someone to check it out, but didn't seem super concerned. While on the phone, I heard the footsteps moving toward the front door, then the sound of someone trying the handle. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely speak. The door was locked, and we had the chair propped against it, but the whole place was so flimsy, I wasn't sure how much that would help if someone really wanted to get in. Then, I heard a key in the lock. Sarah came out of the bathroom fully dressed, and I motioned for her to be quiet. We both stood frozen, staring at the door as the lock turned. The door pushed open slightly but caught on the chair. There was a pause, then more pressure against the door, pushing the chair a few inches across the floor. "The police are on their way," I shouted, trying to sound braver than I felt. "We've already given them your description." The pressure on the door immediately stopped. We heard footsteps quickly retreating across the gravel, then silence. About 10 minutes later, which felt like hours, 2 police officers arrived. They searched the property, but found no one. They did, however, discover something disturbing. The main house that we thought belonged to our Airbnb host was actually a completely separate property with different owners. Our guest house was isolated on its own lot, with no main house connected to it at all. When they contacted Melissa through Airbnb, she confirmed she managed the property remotely and hadn't been there since cleaning between guests 3 days earlier. She also confirmed she had not left any notes about noise and did not have any manager on site. The police advised us to find other accommodations for the night. We grabbed our stuff and checked into a Holiday Inn near the airport, even though it cost way more than we had budgeted. The next morning, we reported everything to Airbnb and left Charleston earlier than planned. A week later, Airbnb emailed to say they had permanently removed that listing from their platform after an investigation. Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts sooner. I still wonder who was watching us and what might have happened if we hadn't propped that chair against the door. When I check into any rental property now, the first thing I do is verify all the locks and check for security cameras. And I never ever stay in isolated properties anymore, no matter how good the deal is. Last April during spring break, I was driving from my college in Phoenix back to my parents' house in San Diego. I'm 19 and it was my first year living away from home, so I was pretty excited about the 6-hour drive alone. Bit of freedom, you know? I left campus around 4 p.m. after my last class, thinking I'd get home around 10 p.m., even with traffic and a dinner stop. I had my playlist ready on Spotify, snacks from Target in the passenger seat, and a full tank of gas in my 2015 Honda Civic. The first 3 hours went perfectly. I was cruising along Interstate 8, singing along to music, enjoying the desert scenery as the sun started to set. It was getting dark when I reached Yuma and decided to grab some food at the McDonald's drive-thru before continuing. Back on the highway, things were quieter now. Fewer cars, darker skies. I wasn't worried though. I'd made this drive with my parents plenty of times. Around 8:30 p.m. I noticed my gas was getting low. No problem, there were rest stops and gas stations along this stretch, right? Except, as I kept driving, I realized the exits were coming less frequently, and the gas gauge kept dipping. My phone showed the next gas station was still 30 miles away, and I wasn't sure I had enough to make it. Then I saw a sign for a rest area coming up in 2 miles, and I figured I could at least pull over, check my map properly, and see if there was a closer option. The rest area was one of those simple ones, just a parking lot with some bathrooms, vending machines, and a small information kiosk. When I pulled in, there were only 2 other vehicles, a semi-truck parked at the far end where truckers usually sleep, and a white pickup truck parked near the restrooms. I parked under one of the lights, kept my car running to save the battery for my phone, and started looking up the nearest gas stations. There was one about 15 miles back the way I came, or 25 miles ahead. Neither was ideal, but I decided to risk going forward rather than backtracking. As I was sitting there with my map open, a man got out of the white pickup and walked toward the restrooms. He was maybe in his 40s, wearing a baseball cap and a plaid shirt. Nothing remarkable about him, but for some reason, I found myself watching him in my rearview mirror. Instead of going into the restroom, though, he stopped and seemed to be looking in my direction. Then he changed course and started walking directly toward my car. My doors were locked. I always lock them automatically, but my window was cracked open a couple inches for air. As he approached, I rolled it up and pretended to be busy on my phone. He tapped on my window. I looked up reluctantly, trying to appear annoyed rather than scared. "Hey there," he said, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "Looks like you might be lost. Need some help?" "No thanks," I replied through the closed window. "Just checking my map. All good." He didn't leave. Instead, he leaned closer to the window. "Where are you headed? Maybe I know a shortcut. These GPS things don't always show the best routes." "I'm fine, really," I said more firmly. "My dad's expecting me soon." A little lie that felt necessary. "Pretty girl like you shouldn't be out driving alone at night," he said, his smile fading slightly. "Lot of weirdos out here. Not safe." The irony wasn't lost on me. I nodded and said, "Thanks for your concern," then made a show of answering a fake phone call. "Hey Dad, yeah, I'm at the rest stop just past Yuma. Should be there in about an hour." The man lingered for another moment, then finally backed away and returned to his truck. I watched him in my mirrors, my heart pounding. He got in, but didn't start the engine. I decided I needed to leave. Gas situation be damned. As I put my car in reverse, the man's truck suddenly came to life, headlights flicking on. I pulled out of the rest area and back onto the highway, accelerating quickly to reach the speed limit. In my rearview mirror, I saw the white pickup pull out behind me. It's a coincidence, I told myself. He's just leaving at the same time. But 5 minutes later, he was still behind me, keeping a consistent distance. 10 minutes. 15. My gas light came on, that little orange warning that normally stressed me out, but now seemed like the least of my problems. I tried not to panic. The highway was empty except for us. No other cars in sight. My phone showed I had service, but who would I call? Police? And tell them what exactly? That a truck was driving behind me on a public highway? I decided to test if he was actually following me. There was an exit coming up that led to nowhere important, just a small local road. At the last second, I took it, not signaling until I was already turning. The white pickup took the exit too. Now I was on a dark one-lane road with no streetlights, no businesses, nothing but desert on either side. And the truck was still behind me, closer now. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, putting it on speaker. 911, what's your emergency? There's a vehicle following me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I realized I didn't even know the name of the road. I just exited I-8 eastbound, the exit after the rest area. It's a white pickup truck. He's been following me for about 20 minutes now. "Can you see a license plate?" "No, it's too dark. I'm alone and—" Suddenly, the truck's high beams flashed on, flooding my car with light. Then it accelerated, closing the distance between us. "He's speeding up," I told the dispatcher, my voice breaking. "Please send someone." The truck was right behind me now, so close I couldn't even see its headlights in my mirror anymore. Just blinding brightness filling my car. Then it tapped my bumper. Not hard enough to cause an accident, but enough to let me know it was deliberate. I screamed and dropped my phone, both hands gripping the steering wheel. For a terrifying moment, I thought he was going to ram me off the road. Instead, the truck suddenly swerved around me, accelerating past on my left, crossing the double yellow line. As it passed, I got a brief glimpse of the driver looking directly at me, that same smile on his face. Then the truck was in front of me, slowing down, forcing me to brake. I was trapped behind him on this narrow road with nowhere to turn around. My phone was somewhere on the floor, the 911 dispatcher's voice too faint to hear. The truck slowed almost to a stop, and I prepared for the worst. But then, just as suddenly as it had appeared behind me, the truck accelerated hard, speeding away down the road until its taillights disappeared around a bend. I was alone again, shaking so badly I had to pull over. I found my phone and told the dispatcher what happened. They asked me to stay put until a highway patrol officer could reach me, which took about 25 minutes. By then, my gas warning light was blinking persistently. The officer took my statement and then followed me to the nearest gas station to make sure I got there safely. He said they'd keep an eye out for the truck, but didn't sound hopeful about catching the guy. I made it home around midnight, completely exhausted and still shaking. My parents were freaked out when I told them what happened, and my dad checked my car the next day. There was a small dent in my rear bumper where the truck had tapped me. Physical proof I hadn't imagined the whole thing. The police called a few days later to say they'd reviewed security footage from the rest area, but couldn't get a clear image of the license plate. They also said there had been several similar reports in that area over the past year. A white pickup following solo female drivers at night. I still don't know what that man wanted, or what might have happened if he hadn't suddenly driven off. Maybe he was just trying to scare me for some sick thrill. Or maybe he saw me on the phone with 911 and decided I wasn't worth the trouble. Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts when I first felt uncomfortable at the rest stop. Now, I never drive long distances alone at night, and I always make sure my gas tank is at least half full before getting on any highway. I also bought one of those emergency car tools that can break windows and cut seatbelts, just in case. Better safe than sorry, right? I'd just turned 25 when this happened last spring break. I was working as a paralegal at this high-pressure law firm in Chicago, and after 6 months of 60-hour weeks, I desperately needed a vacation. My boyfriend Jake had broken up with me a few weeks earlier, so my best friend Megan suggested we take a girls' trip somewhere warm. We found this gorgeous beach house on VRBO in the Florida Keys that was supposedly a steal at $1,200 for the week. Looking back, that should have been the first red flag. It was way too cheap for what was advertised. But we were so excited about the private beach access and the fact that it was secluded compared to the crowded resorts that we booked it immediately. The place was about a 30-minute drive from Key West, down this winding road that got increasingly remote. We arrived Saturday afternoon in our rental Nissan Altima, following the GPS to what felt like the middle of nowhere. The house itself was exactly as pictured. A beautiful 2-bedroom cottage with a wraparound porch, right on a small private beach. The property manager, a guy named Ray, who looked to be in his 60s, met us with the keys. He was friendly enough, pointing out features of the house and telling us about local restaurants. Before leaving, he mentioned, "Cell service can be spotty out here, but the Wi-Fi works fine. If you need anything, there's a landline. and my number's on the fridge. After he left, Megan and I explored the house. It was nicely furnished, but had that slightly worn look of a place that's been rented out for years. We unpacked, opened some White Claws, and spent the rest of the day on the beach. That night, we made dinner in the kitchen and watched Netflix on Megan's iPad. Around 10 p.m., we heard a boat motor somewhere nearby. We didn't think much of it. We were on the water after all. But when we looked out the window, we could see lights moving slowly along the shoreline, maybe 100 yards from our beach. Probably just night fishing, Megan said, and I agreed. We went to bed around midnight. I woke up around 3 a.m. to use the bathroom and noticed headlights outside. Through the bathroom window, I could see a pickup truck parked at the end of our long driveway. Its lights off, but engine still running. As I watched, the truck backed up and drove away. I went back to bed but mentioned it to Megan in the morning. Maybe it was Ray checking on the property, she suggested, at 3 a.m.? Seems weird, she shrugged. People are weird in vacation towns. We spent Sunday exploring Key West, coming back to the house around 8 p.m. As we pulled into the driveway, I noticed something. Was that sliding door open when we left? I asked, pointing to the glass door leading to the porch. Megan frowned. I don't think so. We approached cautiously. The door was definitely open about 6 inches. We looked at each other, neither wanting to go in first. Maybe the cleaning service came by? Megan offered weakly. On a Sunday night? We called Ray from the driveway. No answer. Finally, we worked up the courage to go inside, staying together and checking every room, closet, and under both beds. Nothing seemed disturbed or missing. Our laptops, iPads, and other valuables were right where we'd left them. Maybe the wind blew it open, I said, not believing it myself. The sliding door had seemed pretty sturdy. We double-checked all the locks that night and pushed a chair against the sliding door. I slept poorly, waking up at every little sound. Monday was overcast, so we decided to stay in and relax. Around noon, someone knocked on the front door. It was a woman in her 40s, dressed in casual beach clothes. "Hi there," she said cheerfully. "I'm Shannon from next door." She gestured vaguely to the right, though the nearest house was a good quarter-mile away. "Just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." Something about her seemed off, too interested in us, asking where we were from, how long we were staying, if we were meeting friends in the area. But I figured maybe she was just one of those overly friendly types. As she was leaving, she said something that stuck with me. "You girls be careful out here all alone. Make sure you lock up tight at night." The way she said it felt more like a warning than friendly advice. That evening, we decided to walk down the beach to a restaurant about a mile away. It was a nice place right on the water, and we ended up staying for a few drinks. By the time we left, it was dark, around 9 p.m. Walking back along the beach with just our phone flashlights, I started feeling uneasy. The shoreline was completely dark, except for occasional distant lights from houses. About halfway home, Megan stopped suddenly. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I listened. Footsteps, crunching on the sand, somewhere behind us. When we stopped, the footsteps stopped too. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding thin in the darkness. No response. We started walking again, faster now, and the footsteps resumed, matching our pace. We broke into a run, not looking back, not stopping until we reached our house. We burst through the door, locked it behind us, and collapsed on the couch, breathing hard. "That was probably nothing," Megan said after we'd calmed down. "Just paranoia." "Yeah," I agreed, not believing it. The next morning, Tuesday, we decided to drive into Marathon to do some shopping. When we got back around 4 p.m., something immediately felt wrong. The front door was unlocked. I was absolutely certain we had locked it. We'd been double-checking all the locks since the sliding door incident. This time, things inside were definitely disturbed. Nothing major. A book moved from the coffee table to the counter. A throw pillow on the floor instead of the couch. The bathroom towels rearranged. Small things you might not notice if you weren't already on edge. We called Ray again. This time he answered and said he'd come right over. When we told him what had happened, he looked genuinely confused. "No one should have access except me," he said, "and I haven't been by since you checked in." He checked all the locks and said, maybe we just forgot to lock the door. We knew we hadn't, but arguing seemed pointless. He offered to have the locks changed if it would make us feel better, but said it would take a day or two to get a locksmith out there. We decided to stay one more night and reassess in the morning. That night, we pushed furniture in front of both doors and took turns staying awake. Nothing happened, but neither of us got much sleep. Wednesday morning, while Megan was in the shower, I decided to explore the property a bit more. Behind the house was a small shed I hadn't noticed before. Curious, I tried the door. It was unlocked. Inside was mostly gardening equipment and beach chairs, but something in the corner caught my eye. A small desk with a monitor on it, showing a split screen of security camera feeds. With a sick feeling, I realized they were showing different angles of the beach house. The driveway, the beach side, and what looked like the living room and kitchen. As I stood frozen, staring at the screens showing our rental house, I heard footsteps on the gravel behind me. Find something interesting? I whirled around to see Ray standing in the doorway of the shed, blocking the exit. His friendly smile was gone. "I was just looking for beach chairs," I stammered. "Didn't your mother teach you not to snoop?" He took a step closer. "Those cameras are for security, to protect my investment." The way he said it made it clear they were for something else entirely. I noticed now that he was wearing the same type of work boots I'd seen footprints from on the beach. "Megan's expecting me back," I said, trying to sound casual. "She'll come looking if I'm gone too long." Ray stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then suddenly, his demeanor changed completely. The friendly smile returned. "Of course! Sorry if I scared you. The shed's off limits to guests. Insurance reasons. Here, let me get you those beach chairs." He reached past me, grabbed 2 folding chairs, and handed them to me like nothing had happened. I mumbled a thanks and hurried back to the house, my heart pounding. Inside, I told Megan everything. We packed our bags immediately and called the VRBO emergency number while driving away. They were sympathetic but not particularly helpful, saying they'd investigate, but we'd need to work through their resolution center for any refund. Once we were safely in a hotel in Key West, we filed a police report. The officer took notes but didn't seem optimistic. "Without evidence of an actual crime, there's not much we can do," he explained. "Having security cameras on a rental property isn't illegal, though not disclosing them to renters is against VRBO's policy." We spent the rest of our vacation in the hotel, barely enjoying it. When we got home, I did some deeper research on the property and found some concerning reviews that hadn't shown up in our initial search. Mentions of feeling watched and items moved around. Nothing explicit enough to raise major red flags, but enough that we should have noticed. About a month later, VRBO emailed to say they'd removed the listing from their platform after multiple similar complaints. I still check rental listings obsessively now, reading every single review and searching the property address online before booking. And I always bring a portable door lock and a security camera detector when traveling. Better paranoid than sorry, right? Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts from the beginning. All those little things that seemed off weren't coincidences or imagination. They were warning signs. Sometimes the scariest threats aren't random strangers, but the people you're supposed to trust to keep you safe. If you enjoyed these chilling true stories, please subscribe to my channel for more terrifying tales that will keep you up at night. Your support helps me continue bringing these spine-tingling experiences to life. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss a scare.